You just got pulled over for an OUI. The officer asks you, "Sir, have you been drinking tonight?" What do I say? Now, you are damned if you do, damned if you don't. You don't have to answer that question. There's no law in the state of Maine that requires you to answer the officer's questions at the stop. But of course, if you don't answer any questions, the officer's going to be suspicious. And he may use that as grounds to expand his investigation. Say maybe he just pulled you over because you were speeding. If the officer can smell the odor of alcohol and you say no, that's been referred to as a facially invalid statement, which is a really nice legal way of saying a lie. So whether you tell the officer the truth or you lie to the officer, either way, or you remain silent, any one of those, it's a Hobbesian choice. It doesn't really matter. But here's the thing. I would rather see someone admit to having a drink earlier in the evening, or even better, saying, "Officer, I'm not answering any questions. Am I under arrest?" than saying, "No, I haven't been drinking, and you've been chugging Budweisers all night," because you can smell that. That's probably the worst thing you can do, is to just flat out lie. Best thing to do is to say, "I'm not answering any questions, officer. Am I free to go or am I under arrest?" and put him back on the spotlight and let him start making difficult decisions professionally on how to handle that situation. Just remember, you don't have to say anything. That's a valid answer as well. If you're pulled over and the officer asks you for copy of your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, and you refuse to do so, you have to provide that documentation at request. You've just been pulled over for a traffic violation or suspicion of drunk driving. You're going to make your case markedly worse by refusing to turn over any documentation. There's no reason not to. And here's the thing. When you get your documents out of the glove box and you're able to do so without difficulty, and you're able to find it without difficulty, you're able to transfer it to the officer without difficulty, guess what somebody like me, remember my team, is going to be hammering on? You weren't impaired, because you had no difficulty providing these documents. You had no difficulty locating these documents. So why make things more difficult by refusing to turn them over? Doesn't make any sense. Just turn your documents over and be compliant with that request. It's a reasonable request. Two common questions I get from people who've already been arrested, okay, which might be you, for an OUI. Do I have to take field sobriety tests in the state of Maine? Do I have to take a chemical test? Should I refuse? Let's deal with the refusal. I cannot advise anyone to break the law. I'm not going to advise you to refuse. The law says you must provide a chemical test at the request of an officer. That is the law. If you don't do that, then they're going to hit you with a refusal, and the penalties are markedly worse. So my advice is follow the law. Even better would be if you're not in the position because you haven't been drinking. But you're here, you're watching this video, so hopefully you've given the officer a breath test upon request, and we'll deal with it. However, you do not have to do field sobriety tests. I can't speak to other states, but there's no law in the state of Maine requiring your compliance to do field sobriety tests. You don't have to comply with that. You don't have to go walk the line. You don't have to stand on one leg and do these ridiculous circus tricks they want you to do roadside. They're just trying to gather more evidence to show that you're unimpaired. Don't give them that evidence. You don't have to. I would refuse to take any field sobriety tests. I would say to the officer, "I'm not taking any tests. Am I under arrest or am I free to go?" And at that point, he'll probably place you under arrest. Just be compliant. But you do not have to take field sobriety tests in the state of Maine. I once had a client that thought it would be great to say, "Bill Bly got me off the first time, and he's the best fucking attorney in the state, and he's going to get me off this time." Well, sadly, that didn't happen. He made my life way more difficult than need be. Don't be a tough guy. Just be compliant. Don't try and resist arrest. Don't mouth off to the cop. Don't say, "You're a fat ass, donut eating MFer. I'm not doing anything you want me to do." Just be compliant. You don't have to talk to the officer. You don't have to give him evidence. You don't have to do field sobriety tests. But you do have to be compliant. Otherwise, you're going to be charged with other crimes like resisting arrest. Don't put yourself in that position. Also, if you're disrespectful Don't you want to be treated? Don't you want people to treat you like you would want to treat them? For the most part, these police officers are just doing their jobs. They didn't pull you over for no good reason. Generally, they pulled you over because you were speeding, you forgot to put your blinker on, you look like you're driving drunk, whatever it is. They're just doing their job. Don't make their day more tough. Just be compliant. And if you're disrespectful, it makes our job as your attorneys more difficult. Because why would the DA want to cut you a break if you're there mouthing off to a police officer who's just doing his job? It doesn't make any sense. Don't be a tough guy. Be respectful. Be compliant. And let us sort things out later. So we've been talking about compliance, being compliant versus what does it mean if I'm being compliant versus incriminating myself? Being compliant doesn't mean you're answering questions. That's not what I'm talking about. Being compliant means the officer asks you for your identification, provide it. The officer asks you to step out of the car, step out of the car, but don't do field sobriety tests. The officer says, I'm placing you under arrest, don't argue with him. That's what your attorney's there for. That's what compliance is not making the officer's job more difficult. But I'm not talking about giving self-incriminating evidence either. I'm not saying go do field sobriety tests. I'm not saying answer all of his questions about where you were coming from and how much you had to drink that night. That's something I'm advising you not to do. So just because I'm saying to be compliant, I'm not saying you should just give up the ghost and tell him everything that happened that night and do field sobriety tests. That is definitely not what I'm saying. People make a lot of mistakes when they get pulled over for an OUI. Don't make the biggest mistake by hiring the wrong legal team or attorney. Instead, call the attorneys at the Maine Criminal Defense Group now.